Okay, so now we're going to engage in our first session. And for the sake of time, I will introduce all our speakers at once, and then we'll bring them up individually. So for the next session, we're going to have, actually, your agenda probably says 4 speakers, but Commander Verhoeven cannot be here today. So our Ted Sherwood has graciously said he would cover that material as well. So we will now have Ted Sherwood, who is the Director of the Office of Regulatory Operations at the Office of Generic Drugs. He will also be covering Scott's talk. And we also have Dr. Joe Shin, Lead Regulatory Health Project Manager at the Division of Project Management within OGD, followed by Dr. Yi Zhang, Associate Director of the Division of Bioequivalence 3 in the Office of Bioequivalence at OGD. And don't be too confused with all these acronyms. You can also find them on the agenda, or you can find them online. So let's welcome our first speaker, Ted Sherwood. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to talk about missed goal dates. You already heard a little bit about this from Darby. Broke the ice. We're going to go into more detail. Fortunately, it's a small set of applications where we miss the goal dates, but we understand the importance of these. If it's your application, we know how critical this is. And so we're going to break this into 2 parts. First, we're going to look at internally, what is the agency doing to try to prevent the misses? What do we do when we think we are going to miss the application? How do we manage that, bring that to a decision, and communicate that to the company? And then how do we go and talk to companies when we're in this missed goal date space? And so those are the things that we're going to be covering over the next 2 presentations. We're going to start with this focus on looking at what is a missed goal date? What does this really mean? Right? What happens with the misses? What causes us to miss the goal dates? And where you can get information about these misses. And so as we go through, you'll hear a little bit more about that. I want to start with something very important. We don't want to miss the goal dates. We understand how frustrated applicants get. We get frustrated with the missed goal dates. We apologize. It's not where we want to be. Right? There's lots and lots of efforts to prevent the applications from being missed. It's hard to understand unless you've been on the other side, on the FDA's side, and seen some of the efforts to move the applications, the coordination, those kind of things that it takes to meet the goal date. Fortunately, again, there's not many applications that miss the goal date, but we understand how important it is to the companies who are in this space. So, and we never give up on an application. That's not who we are. We miss the goal date, we still must continue to work that application to a decision. And I know sometimes people get a little concerned, we haven't heard anything. We never stop working on these applications. So what does it mean to miss a goal date? We have a responsibility at the agency to give you a complete decision on that application and communicate it to you, right? Those are the 2 aspects. When we talk about completion, it means all of the disciplines, bioequivalence, quality, labeling, clinical, everything. There's a whole host of these. All of the facilities, all of the contractors, all of their information, all of their facilities, all that has to be pulled together into a final decision. And then we've got to issue that decision to the company. What's going on in this space, right? I want to first point out that is a goal date. This is a decision from the agency. Oftentimes companies call me and says, we received a letter, but it wasn't an approval. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at, did we make the decision? Did we pull together all of these pieces, all of these facilities, all this contract information to give you the decision on time, not the approval? We hope it's an approval. We want the approvals. For the assessors, oftentimes it's easier to approve an application than to document what's wrong. I looked at it, it was great, versus I looked at it, these 10 things are wrong, and then you've got to figure out how do you communicate that, how do you translate what you need to industry so they can give you something back, right? We want the approvals. As managers, a lot of pressure, not to approve your specific application, but to make sure that the program is continuing to approve lots of high quality generic drugs. And not just approving them, but approving them on that earliest lawful approval date. When can we get these into the hands of the patients? That's what matters to us. But there's another factor. We can only approve appropriate applications when everything is right, all of those pieces right, and all of them right at that same instant. Then and only then can we move that application forward. So when we look at what is a missed goal date, when we haven't been able to pull everything together on time, right? We didn't finish something, we couldn't reach out to this particular site, we're waiting for information to be able to close out our assessment. Right? Now, the key is locking it in to that goal date. And oftentimes we see a little bit of confusion. People don't understand, oh, the goal date's changed. You send in an amendment, that's likely to change the goal date. Depends on the situation. Some do, some don't. It depends. If it's unsolicited, very likely to impact the goal date. We'll send a new acknowledgement letter. That's your guide. It will list what the new goal date is. We will then re-coordinate with the team. There's extra pieces of information or potentially even extra facilities that now have to be evaluated as part of making that final decision. You may receive 2 goal dates in an acknowledgement letter, and we'll walk through an example of that in a moment. So here you can see it. Right? There's the text, and the key takeaway from this paragraph is you have 2 bolded dates. Here's your goal date. Here's a longer goal date if we have to do an inspection or something equivalent to an inspection. There's a couple other alternatives that we can use and still sort of get the information that's necessary to bring back to the assessment team to make the final decision. So the key in that big paragraph are these 2 dates that are highlighted there. Those are your GDUFA goal dates. We'll use the longer if we need to inspect. Right? Can't say that enough. Oftentimes, we'll get phone calls. Oh, the early date's passed. It means you missed. Are you going into the backup date? No, it means there's an inspection or something similar going on. So in this example, if we approve October 1st, that's a make, right? Because we needed to inspect the application, right? There were 1 or more facilities. Doesn't matter if there's 10 facilities, 1 facility. If we have to go out and inspect, we get that longer date. We issue the CRL October 31st. That's a miss, right? We inspected and we still didn't get everything done. Right? We have to report those misses, both internally and, as you see later on, publicly. We get the approval October 31st, and we did the inspection. That's a make, and we'll talk in a few minutes about imminent action, right? We were past that original date that we notified you, but we'll talk a little bit. There's a little bit of a sort of an escape clause to help both the applicants and the agency bring an application that's close to the finish line over that finish line, get it approved, get it in the hands of the patients. So looking at this from a little different lens, a couple other examples. We approve it on October 1st. We inspect, that's a make. Met the goal date. That goal date was October 21st in this example. It doesn't matter if the inspection is September 1st or May 1st. Right? If the inspection is before the shorter of the goal dates, that doesn't mean that that's the goal date that applies. Companies are confused. Oh, well, you inspected right before. There's a lot that goes on after the inspection. Inspection is a huge milestone. Lots of coordination and effort to get the investigator out to your site to do the inspection. But that's not it. They've got to come back. They've got to report into their organizations. The organizations have to bring the results to the assessment team. This is what we saw. Is this what you expected us to see? Is this an appropriate match or not? And certainly if it's not a right match, think of the level of effort then that we have to go and describe. Here's the gap. How do we start to communicate that back to the applicant, or maybe it's a drug manufacturer or somebody else who's been in a contracting role for this company? And so in this case, doesn't matter. Did we issue the letter on time? Not when the inspection occurred. Now, we miss the goal date. There's a lot that happens. And in many cases, it starts happening even before the miss. We like to minimize the misses. We like to prevent an application from being missed if we can save it. So there's lots of communications going on across the agency. Every single day, dozens and dozens of interactions between the different project managers. Each of the disciplines has a project manager. They're reporting in. to sort of the central project manager, the regulatory project managers. Those are the ones responsible for managing that application. We'll talk a little bit about the command center. We'll even talk very quickly about the letter signers. We're alerting people who are responsible for making the final decision on the application. Hey, this one's very close to the goal date. Can you work on it right away? Right? We'll work with them. Maybe there's some efforts that we could do the prep to try to prevent that from being a miss. And I won't ask people to raise their hands here, but many of you have probably received an action letter the night before the goal date, the day of the goal date. Right? These people are getting together to minimize those misses. Then we mentioned the command center. This is very important. It's one of the key sort of forums that we have to look at specific applications and then to look at the mass of applications. At any given time, we have around 1,400 original applications that are in flight, right? Different pieces of information being pulled together, right? The burden on us to make that final decision. So we're going to be doing, providing advance warnings on misses. Here's what's happening to my application. I'm reporting back to the larger team. I need a little help with this one. Can somebody in this other group quickly give me some input? Maybe there's a larger theme mentioned earlier with data integrity. Let's go as far as we can, and then we'll work with the team that's managing that effort and show them that this application we think fits into that, right? Help them sort of screen it to see whether it does or not. We're going to even take it to the original receipt. We start managing the applications even before you receive the acknowledgement letter. It's on the radar screen that early. Working with folks in the Office of Management to make sure the fees have been paid appropriately. Looking through to make sure all the pieces are there so we can turn it over to the disciplines to do their analysis, to the investigators to do their inspections. We want to make sure we understand what this application is, what it contains. Is it eligible to be a generic? Right? If it starts to get slowed down at this filing point, then we could be jeopardizing our timelines. So that's the level. Everybody knows this came in, here's what we think is going on. This is a special issue. This one requires an extra mid-cycle communication. Those are the kind of things that we're doing, lining it up so everybody sees what's happening. If we miss the goal date, we've got to report back that application to what we call the senior command center. Now we're moving from the project managers into A&DA leadership, OGD, OPQ, other groups sitting in there, especially people who are involved in some of the bioequivalence or clinical sites, helping us to go through and figure out what went wrong. And how long did it take us past the miss? And so we analyze it two different ways, and we'll give you little examples of that. Right? We're looking at what happened in real time. We close out a month. Let's look at the goal dates that were assigned that month. Did we honor our commitment? If not, why? And is there a lesson learned that we can take back? Is it a one-off situation? Maybe the applicant did something at the last minute. All right, that happens. Let's work. Let's see if we can do a little faster. Maybe there's something on our side. Right? Maybe something got missed earlier. Do we need to go back, heighten the awareness, flag these a little differently when that application first comes through the threshold? That's the level we're going to try to help move all of these applications forward. So I give you some of the data. This chart is very different than what you're going to see in the normal public domain. It's lower. We are harder on ourselves than we have to publicly report out because we're going to look in real time. How are these applications doing? So this does not count imminent action, and I'll explain what that means a little bit more. The reality is the final public posted numbers, sort of the rule of thumb is you can almost split the difference. And so if we're off, we're showing 88% one month, probably about half of those are going to be imminent actions. In the final goal, which we'll show a little bit later, will be raised up over 90%. But we want to know why there was a miss, even if it's for a good reason. We're missing it, but we think we can approve it in a week or two. So we post the imminent actions. This is part of our approval counts. And I'll note it's a subset. We approve 70 a month, 7 were imminent action. That's a subset of those. It's not predicting future approvals or those kind of things. We're reporting in real time. What happened for the month that just closed out? How do we do? So you can see what's going on, how many of them were done on time versus the imminent action route. All of that information's out there. Internally, we're going application by application in front of the leadership team. These are the ones that didn't make the goal date. The ones in green, we're moving towards approval. That was a good thing. And we'll explain a little bit later how we have sort of permission to do this. But we need to know what's going on, and we need to make sure we're making a strategic decision to move this application into imminent action, getting your approval or tentative approval, or do we need to hold the line and issue a complete response sort of on the eve of the goal date? We don't stop with the originals. Supplements, especially prior approval supplements, have GDUFA goal dates. There's thousands of supplements pending. We've got to look at those. We have to make sure that those are running as well. And as you'd expect, right, we're a little bit more strength in the program in terms of meeting our commitment for supplements. They're smaller in scope, less connections that we have to do in many cases. There certainly are some exceptions too. Think about that in your perspective. You get a new API, right? Could be inspections, review, all of those kind of things, even bioequivalent studies that justify that. Starts to sound like an original application. Big or small, make a change, we need to know about it, we need to move that forward. Some of the causes for misses. You already heard about data integrity. Sort of outside the immediate control of the team, we want to be able to make these decisions faster. But the issue wasn't FDA dropping the ball. The issue was FDA uncovered something that required significant resources. You would not believe the level of effort that the agency has to put into this. So there's a recent untitled letter that's posted. Some of the communications are listed there. Some of the ones we had with the company, not all of them. There was not a week that went by without several. In many cases, people were meeting almost on a daily basis to figure out what's the impact, which applications are affected, are they directly impacted or not? If so, what do we need to do? What's the path for this application? And then translating that into a specific application communication. Facility issues. Things come up, our understanding changes. Companies send in updates late in the cycle. We've got to make sure it's done. Inspections. We try to identify the applications that need inspection when the application first comes in. And in fact, some people can get a head start in some of the priority applications and send in facility stuff even in advance of the application. That's wonderful. But sometimes during the course of our review, we see something that triggers us to go out and inspect. Company says 2 + 2 is 5. We're going to say, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Let's go out and see what's really going on. So we will miss the goal date to get that result back. We said we owe you a complete response. We will miss the goal date to make sure we're giving you the complete response as opposed to sitting on this and bringing it up in a subsequent cycle. We want to be done and tell you exactly what needs to happen. Life cycle issues. Sometimes waiting for things to happen with the brand product. We've got to get that locked in. If there's labeling updates, have to get that out the door to the brand company, published, so that generic companies know what that new message is. They need to submit, we need to assess, and then of course, hopefully move it into the appropriate channel and get it approved. And then the last one, program errors. You can help us with these. There's a cover letter attachment which companies can fill out to sort of help navigate the application and, more importantly, translate it so we know what you're sending in and who needs to be activated to help us go through. One of the most common sort of problems that we see in this space is there's hidden information. We don't realize there's an inspection need because the facility was buried on page 500. They didn't identify there was a new site or a new process or something like that going on. Studies that aren't in the right module. This happens periodically. So take advantage of this cover letter. It was designed specifically to help you direct the project manager to what's in the application so the project manager can then activate the appropriate team members. So, challenge question. What happens when we miss a goal date? Do we move on to the next ANDA? No way. We don't ever stop. We withdraw the application. That's not us. If you want to withdraw it, that's your business, but FDA cannot withdraw it for you. Right? And that's not our intent. Right? Our mission is to make drugs accessible. We need you to be successful so that we are carrying out our mission. We never give up. That's the key. It may seem like, oh, they missed the goal date, we don't know what's going on, but I guarantee you there is a flurry of activity going on behind the scenes. Then imminent actions are reported as a subset of the monthly APs and TAs, additive, or future approvals. They're a subset. We will show you what we just did. The month that closed, here are the approvals, here's that subset that took advantage of that imminent action program. And of course, if you're working through this path, you can be in communication with your regulatory project manager, and he or she will kind of walk you through what's going on with your application. We've got all sorts of public information available about this. You can track what we're doing. There's the formal GDUFA performance report. We also, sort of new to GDUFA 3, have sort of a parallel web posting, and for many of the sort of high-level assessment metrics, you're going to find even more detail getting into the very specifics, not just amendments, but this specific type of amendment. That information is going to be posted there. We have the FDA track, which we'll walk through in a moment, is a little different type of information to help you see sort of what happens in that first cycle of the application. When we look at the performance report, here's what it looks like, right? All sorts of charts and columns, right? It's a report card. We are showing you what we have done within the program. And some people are confused by this, and we get questions about what's going on with the data. And oftentimes it's questions coming from industry itself. When we post the range, it's an absolute worst case scenario. If we do no more work, period, which of course we don't have that option, but that's what would happen. Or if everything is perfect from this point forward, right, the best possible scenario. And so we're going to give you both of those. When the year closes, here's what we've done. Here's what our potential range is going to be. And then we're also going to depict the imminent actions. As part of the agreement with industry, if it's close to the finish line, we said we could work together to push it through versus having to stop our assessment efforts, issue a complete response letter. You guys still have to address the issue, but now you're going to go wait in line for us to open it up and to re-examine and to put back in front of that assessment team. So it's in the commitment letter that we will consider the goal met if we can get the approval or tentative approval done within 60 days of the goal date. And so we're going to capture that in the performance report. That's what we're graded on in terms of what did the program do, right? And so take a look at that column. You can see what's happening. You can compare your applications to that, especially some of the larger companies. We had 10 approvals. How many of them were on time? Those kind of things. Then we mentioned the web reporting, depicting a little bit more information than's captured in the performance report itself. You can go in and look at all of the different possibilities. It was an amendment. It was an amendment with a PFC. All of those kind of nuances are captured. We're not trying to hide anything. We want you to know what's going on within the program. Then we have the FDA track. This is a little different than some of the other user fee performance metrics that we have in the GDUFA program. This is looking at actions that are occurring rather than taking the cohort of submissions that we have to do for the performance reports to say, here's what's happening in real time, and focusing in on that first cycle. That's your stepping stone. And hopefully we'll get more and more approvals out of this cycle too, as we start to get better submissions and we can communicate a little bit more what the expectations are for the next generation of applications coming before us. And so here, it's a little bit of an older term because it's older data, but when we talk about imminent or tentative approvals, that's what we now call in GDUFA 3, the modern program, the imminent action. So you can see what's going on. Big jump here. Our first cycle approvals are happening because we're able to push that application through, use this imminent action period. Very big difference between these two numbers. That shows you the level of effort. Oh, we were so close. Let's work together to get it done. We want this. It's easier for us, it's better for you, and it is a win for the patient. So our Question here, imminent actions count on meeting the goal date. If we approve it the next cycle, no, we want it approved now. If we get the ANDA approved prior to the goal date, that's huge. That's the desired state. That's not an imminent action. Most of the approvals do happen before the goal date, but we have this extra 60-day period that's lined up. If we approve on day 61, you get your approval, we still take the miss and have to report that as a miss. And of course, we're going to go back through the command center and other forums to figure out why we missed it. Why did it take us so long to approve? So there's a lot of information out there on the program. You can see how successful we are in sort of executing our commitments in the GDUFA 3 space. You can see the health of the entire ANDA program. You can see the health of your program. We're putting these numbers out. You can start to figure out how you guys are doing versus sort of what we're seeing as the average. It's a good time to submit the ANDAs. Lots of efforts in the pre-submission space to figure out your path forward, from product-specific guidances to controlled correspondences to meetings and things like that occurring during the first cycle, even after the cycle's concluded. If there's questions or clarification that's needed, right, send in the applications. We will work to get you the answers. So with that, we're going to pivot gears and apologize. You're going to get the B team for this one. Scott Fahovic is really the expert in all this. Unfortunately, he's under the weather today, but he's one of the masterminds of pulling together all of the information and really does efforts across the entire ANDA program. He sits in OGD, but he works on behalf of the companies to make sure that everybody in the ANDA program knows what to do with each of the applications that come forward. He's one of these guys who's looking at both the micro and one specific application and macro, 1,300 applications. How are they moving through? So what he's trying to line up here is explain how we're opening up some of our communications. Historically, we've had to be very conservative in what we're able to provide the companies. You send it to us, miss the goal date, you knock on a door, well, we're working on it, right? We want to try to give you more insight. We know how important it is for you guys to start to be able to at least to get a little feel for what's going on so that you can make the appropriate business decisions. Then we'll talk a little bit about the pilot itself. What are we doing to enhance our transparency? What the benefits are? Is it working? And give you some hints too about how to sort of successfully navigate this space. So you can tell this was done by somebody else because you have a nice subtle graphic here, right? Looking at the past, right? In the past, like we said, very little communication. We missed the goal date. We're still in what's called sort of the open cycle. It's pending us, and you don't hear much. Usually the communications were triggered by the applicant. You get nervous. The goal date came and went. Start calling around. What's going on? We had very limited and very sort of high-level phrases. It's under review. Team's working on it. There's a thorny issue that we're untangling. It doesn't really give you a lot of information. Where's the thorny issue? What type of issue? How long are the thorns, right? Those are the things people want to know. And then people want to know when we're going to get finished. And so in some cases, historically, we were able to provide a little bit of information. If it was one of those where something happened, maybe we missed something in the application, once we find that hidden thing, we can work with the appropriate discipline, identify it, get their timeline. In those cases, we would communicate the timeline to you. But if we're untangling something, there's very little we could say. You're going to get some very high-level statements. Many weeks, many months. These are FDA months, so I won't scare anybody with getting into what that means, but sort of glacier pace for many of these things. And so we're trying to provide more insight with that. In the commitment letter, gives us the authority to communicate even in advance. And so hopefully you're starting to see more and more of a pivot. We're going to be reaching out to the companies. We don't always know of a miss early on. That's why we have these different forums. Maybe there's something obvious to the application, something very unique. Maybe there's a facility that's hard for us to reach. We can talk to you. Hey, did you see it? There was a State Department warning that was issued. You have a site in the area that was identified in this. right? Those are the kind of things we can communicate in advance. I've had status calls myself with company in advance of the miss. Hey, we want to let you know, strongly feel that we're going to miss for this particular application. We can start that discussion. And of course, if there's any way to save it, we will do that. And two, we're trying to focus more on what we think your needs are. Increasing the frequency of communications. In the old days, we missed it, call us back in 6 weeks. We're going to be more proactive, set it up. We missed it, we're working on it, we'll report back in a couple weeks. Even if we say we think it's going to take several months, we will sit down with you in 2 weeks. We will do whatever helps you understand that we have not given up on this application, it did not fall through the cracks. We may not be able to give you an answer right away, but we will work this until it is done. And trying to find a little bit more precise language in terms of what does it mean? Where's the hang up? Right? We said it was a thorny issue being untangled. Let's try to explain a little bit more about what that issue is. Some of the benefits for this. Starting to help industry, right? Hopefully keep the peace a little bit. The companies feel a little bit more informed, right? A little bit more in control of the understanding, at least, of what's happening with their application. And we're certainly seeing companies being more and more sort of focused on their applications in this. People are making big decisions on the timing of their applications. And so I think the level of requests for status updates and things like that is only increased over time. We recognize that every application is important. We're not allowed to leave the application behind, but we will work with you. We know it's important to you, whether it's the first generic where we both want to get it out the door, or maybe it's the 11th version of something, but it's important to your company. We will go 110%, anything in that spectrum. Right? We must work until it's done. And then, as we said, we'll try to get the communications. You won't leave the phone without the project manager setting up another conference. As the application gets later and later past the goal date, right, you'll have more and more senior management on the phone. I've been on the phone. Darby's been on the phone with companies. That's the commitment. Right? We will talk to you. We will let you know what we can. So it has been successful. We're seeing a little bit more collaboration, probably a little bit more trust in what the agency's saying because we're able to provide more information than it's pending or it's inadequate with major, but we're working on somebody else, right? There's another discipline that's still locked up. Right? Here's what's happening. This group's done. It looks like they will be done. The issue that we're untangling relates to X. X is unique to that discipline. So these other disciplines, their decision is going to stay. We're working together more as a team too to communicate and to share the language, especially if we have an issue that's holding up many applications from different companies, right? Work together. What do we think the appropriate communication is? Treat everybody fairly. Everybody gets the same sort of message. And then the other part is they will then take that and cater it to your specific need. These disciplines done are why we're working on this issue. We're going to try to communicate an issue from one of the other unimpacted disciplines, right? More and more IRs and DRLs coming, even of significant issues, why we are wrapping up that sort of tangled mess. And so lots of activity to keep the flow of communications. If we have a bioequivalence issue, that was a common one due to some of the recent issues. The quality folks have committed to working with us. Hey, normally we wouldn't communicate to the company until bio was done, but we think this is safe. We think it's not related. They're going to send it out. Right? Keep that momentum going. At least we can get the quality piece squared away. And then when we get the answer for bioequivalence, maybe it is okay. We can move to approval, or it's not okay. At least the company now can focus on just one discipline, get that cleaned up, get that application back to us. So what can you do to help facilitate in all of this? Make sure the contact information is correct. And that's pretty high level, and I think most people understand updating the 356H. Do pay attention to it. Make sure you use sort of consistent company names and things like that. Oftentimes we'll see the 356 will change, LLC will change to Inc., those kind of things. Not the end of the world, but it will get flagged, and it's a little bit extra work for everybody. The other thing is make sure that the people acting on your behalf have secure email, especially if it's coming from the applicant themselves. We must communicate through sort of these secure channels. And if you look at the regs, it talks about confidential information. The status of an unapproved application is considered confidential information. And we don't want it going into the wrong hands. You don't want it going into the wrong hands. So take that extra effort. Companies have gotten much better about this, but still periodically you see some companies who struggle, or they turnover in the regulatory affairs staff. The new members don't have this secure email. It slows down the communication. We've got to wait until you get registered in the system. And then we're going to start these different communications. So here we have the transparency pilot. It's designed to further enhance collaborative information between the agency and the company. Certainly that's true, and that's our goal behind all of this. There may be instances where we cannot communicate the specific nature. That's true. There will be some. We're going to try to minimize those, but certainly with 1,400 applications, you can see there's going to be a few special cases. We're not allowed to communicate because another federal agency has an action that has to occur first. Obviously, we're not going to be able to say much. But when we can, when it's FDA, certainly when we've dropped the ball or need to do something differently, we'll give you as much information as possible. Representatives or attorneys may openly communicate. That's not true. There's a big step that needs to happen here. If it's your normal contact, they can talk to us, get the secure email, then you can communicate it. And certainly we want those communications. Don't call the project manager every day, but work with them, figure out the appropriate sort of cadence of those interactions. But we understand that periodically you want outside assistance, especially when we're looking at missed goal dates. Companies may reach out to consultants or law firms. The majority of the time I get a call from one of these consultants, I'm not allowed to respond because the applicant hasn't updated their application. Very simple step, one paragraph. Your regulatory affairs people saying we are now authorizing John Doe Esquire to act on their behalf for this application. That's all we need. So put that in the application. Then we can give them the whole story. But without that, we have to delay, or we'll circle back to the company themselves. Hey, somebody called on your specific application. Here's what the answer is. Right now you have two different conversations going. That doesn't help. And so that's the key. Make sure that your person is locked up. And then, of course, transparency isn't just happening with the miss. We're working in advance to share the information, right? Minimize the misses, but let you know if we think we're going to miss the application. Then the next question, how frequently are we going to set up these communications? So this is just sort of a general rule of thumb, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, or when you knock on our door, right? We're going to be more proactive and set these up. We'll work with the companies. We can make it a little longer, shorter, things of that nature, depending on what's going on with the product. But that's a good rule of thumb to sort of start this way. We're on it. We'll be glad to communicate. And, we don't care if it's 13 days or 15 days, right? We'll work with you to try to fit your calendar. We owe you, right? It's past the goal date. Some final thoughts here. But it's live. More and more of our misses are sort of fitting this, starting to use more and more of this language, reaching out, being proactive, making sure you know as much as we're allowed to tell you. And we've really changed that rule. There's much more space now for us to communicate than there has been historically. But the key is start with regulatory project manager. That's the key. They know the most. People call me all the time. What's the first thing I do? Reach out to the project manager. Hey, what's going on? I'll do a little homework, look at the application, but I have to talk to them. Even if the tool says one thing, I still want to talk because there may be something that's not captured in the system. They know the real story. They know more than I do. Talk to them. Now, as part of these discussions, if it languishes, they're going to elevate this, and more of the calls, you're going to start to see senior management come on. As we said, I've been on calls. Darby's been on calls. Right? The office director has been on calls with companies. So with that, we'll refer to the panel for some additional questions if there's time later on, and I will turn it over to our next speaker, Dr. Joe Shin.